Which running back in the Motor City will help you get to the finish line on top? When is the right time to draft Deebo Samuel? And who are the 42 Joes making up this year's field in the 2020 FFPC Pros vs. Joes Challenge? Plus, 15-time FFPC and Football Guys League champ Frank Nunes hangs out to talk David Njoku, Damian Williams, rookie draft picks, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Dave Gerzak is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Let's begin now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak.
I'm still above ground, that's the reason I pray. Got my car cleaned up, now I'm ready to play. Make a call to the stick, say I'm headed that way. Heard my cousin cooking out, I gotta get me a plate.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Gerzakin addicts. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, as always, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is indeed the patron saint of fantasy football, the Dizzle, Dave Gerzak. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk about whether Deshaun Jackson is in danger of being released, whether Joe Burrow is a Sharky pick, and we'll speak with 15-time FFPC and Football Guys Players Championship League winner Frank Nunes about his Football Guys draft this summer, the Rams tight end situation, and much more. Shout out to the chat room right now. If you guys have any questions, post them right now. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, the show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Dave is at David Gerzak. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour is where to reach us there. If you want to chime in and give us a call, definitely do that. 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. You can also email the show at the inbox at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. Want to remind everybody, if you have not tuned into this program before, we are available here each and every Friday night, 10, 9 Central, and we also air much, much later on demand as well. If you want to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, basically everything. We've done a pretty good job, both our mutual friend and producer, Rob, and our audio engineer, and my best friend, Bryce. We do a pretty good job getting it out to all the podcast networks out there. There's a couple more we're trying to get on right now. We'll see what happens with that. But if you are listening to podcasts currently, chances are we are on that network. And if we're not, let us know. highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. We'll try to get on the one that you prefer as well. So I want to remind everybody, if you are looking for an FFPC main event deal, there's one going on right now. If you've already got your first team, make sure you're signing up for additional teams at $400 off the regular price at myffpc.com. That's whether you're drafting live with us in Planet Hollywood, which, by the way, we have some pretty good room discounts there. Talk to Greg Sidoris, who you can check out his contact info both on the FFPC blog, the FFPC e-newsletter, and myffpc.com. He'll hook you up. But whether you're drafting live or from the comfort of your own home, $400 off each additional team in the FFPC main event right now. And remember, slow drafts are live there. If you want to hop in an FFPC main event slow draft, you can do that. 2020 Football Guys Players Championship. Those drafts are filling up each and every single day, multiple drafts a day, $500,000 grand prize, and that a $3.1 million prize pool. If you don't want to hop into the major contest, you definitely can get into the best ball leagues, the best ball slim leagues, the Terminator Sats, plenty of other best balls, all active right now, and, of course, Dynasty Startups available at myffpc.com. Now, the big news tonight, and I know everybody's tuning in to hear their names called, or maybe your name won't be called. We'll see what happens. Good luck to each and every one of you FFPC main event players that are hoping to be in the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge for 2020. We are going to read off what I thought was going to be 36 names tonight. That is not true. It's going to be 42 names. 42 players are getting in as Joes in the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge this year. Why is that? It's because we added an FFPC Pros versus Joes slow draft this year. So 6 bonus Joes will be awarded. Remember, if you hear your name tonight, you can email. Well, you don't even have to email. You're going to be getting an email from Darren Armani to find out what day and date, time is preferable for you to draft your Pros versus Joes team as you try to compete against the best and win a 2021 FFPC main event free team. You can also draft in a slow draft as well. So, Dave, for the first time tonight, 42 Joes are going to be have their names read tonight.
Oh, that's great, Balky. I'm very excited.
There's plenty of other people that are excited, too, that are tuning in tonight. And I guess without further ado, I know you like to get this out of the way early. Let's just get it out of the way right now.
Yes, let's do it now instead of saying, hey, we'll talk about it in 55 minutes or whatever, and then people just skip the rest of the second part of the show, which is the show.
They're streaming it later. And by the way, the end of the show is always the best part. If they're like downloading it or streaming it live after we've already recorded this, if they're not listening live.
On Spreaker?
That's the other great podcast network that we're on, Spreaker. iHeartRadio is my dream. We're trying to get on that right now. What
the hell is that?
iHeartRadio?
Yeah.
Huge radio and podcasting network out there. We need some more followers right now. It's okay. It's fine.
All right, whatever.
I'm going to read these 6 at a time, Dave. I'm going to go through this.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not going to comment as much as I've...
That's fine. I will be reading these off 6 at a time. If you hear your name, you're going to be receiving an email from Darren Armani. Congratulations in advance for being selected to the 2020 FFPC Pros versus Joes random drawing that was held earlier before the show tonight. All right, kicking things off, former guest of this show, Jimmy Wagner. Welcome aboard in the Pros versus Joes. You will be competing this year. Arguably one of the best, well, not arguably, he is one of the best fantasy football players in the world. Chad Schroeder, also going to be participating in the PVJ this year. That will be a fun draft to do. Kevin Proctor, former guest of this show, will be in, as well as Todd Hopkins, former FFPC main event champion, overall champ. Gary Allen, going to be participating in PVJ this year, as
Trunk
well as...
Monkey?
Yes, exactly, Trunk Monkey. Brian Tuminello is also going to be in. Those are the first 6 names in the Pros vs. Joes challenge this year. Some good names there.
Can I just inject one thing? Sometimes people say, a guy like Chad Schrader, it's not fair that he gets in, he's got all those teams. One thing that people sometimes maybe don't think about or don't consider is, let's say Chad has 60 teams. I have no idea how many.
It won't be that many, but okay.
Well, maybe, yeah, whatever. So if if he gets his name drawn, his other 59 teams get thrown out.
Yep. So
that immediately actually increases the odds of anyone else that just has only 1 or 2 teams.
It's true. Yeah.
That's my little don't complain too much about people who have a ton of teams pitch.
You cannot be selected twice, just like the NBA draft lottery. If your combination comes up again, it's thrown out. And the rest of your combination, well, I guess that's what it is. The rest of your combinations are automatically thrown out at the point you're drawn the first time.
Yes.
All right, moving on. James Jewell, going to be in PVJ this year. A former guest of this show, he's also been on the High Stakes Lowdown. John Shaw, Mr. War Eagle.
Oh, really?
Yes, John Shaw will be in
great.
Pros vs. Joes this year.
I enjoy playing blackjack with him. Actually.
Yes, I know. So does Alex, by the way.
He's fun. He's a fun guy.
It's weird because no matter what time of the night I'm rolling through Planet Hollywood, I always seem to see you and John at a table or Alex and John at a table.
That's pretty funny.
By the way,
every year. Chris drew these names, right?
Yeah, Chris did this. Yeah. This had nothing to do with me, Alex, you, Mike, anybody else. This was all Chris.
None of the dudes.
None of the dudes, that's true. All right, so a guy who has been a guest on this show and who has been in the PVJ before, longtime high-stakes player dating back, 15, 20 years. Peter St. Pierre will be in the Pros vs. Joes this year.
Good for him.
Craig Strang, and a guy I'd actually like to get back on the show here, Sky Eilers, who is a big fan of the Pros vs. Joes format, drafted in it before, been successful in it, and he's also had some success in the Footballguys Players Championship in the main event. He'll be in PVJ this year. Matt Groth is the 12th name that we have drawn this year. Those guys will all be in Pros vs. Joes. Okay, moving on. A guy who has been on the High Stakes Lowdown and on this show before, Ryan Poole, a Wisconsin guy, which I'm always a fan of when we get those guys in. Ryan Poole will be in. They have last week's guest, Mark Davidson, is going to be in Pros vs. Joes this year. So hopefully we get to hear from him while he's doing his live draft, unless he picks slow, in which case we won't hear from him. Chandler Saprina, Paul Friel, Jason Aberle. Aberle is the Godfather, if I'm remembering correctly, Dave. Godfather. Jason Aberle will be in. And then a guy who has always been the bridesmaid, never the bride. A guy who has won a couple of Football Guys regular season championships, couldn't seal the deal in the postseason sprint. Thomas Greenwald will be in Pros vs. Joes this year as well.
How insulting.
Well, you couldn't see, but I mean, okay, so it's incredible to obviously finish first place in the regular season, which Tom has done twice now, but he is going to try to win Pros vs. Joes this year.
That's
definitely
cool.
a name to be tangled with. Okay, so that's the first 18 out of 42. Here we go with the rest.
By the way, these pros are in trouble. That's a lot of really
these
good.
are big names, for sure. Matthew Jacobson, congratulations, you are in, as well as James Foster. A really skilled dynasty player. He's had some success in redraft, but be super good at dynasty. Brian Pakula will be in this year as well. Former guest of the HSLD as well as the HSFF Hour, former co-host of the show, Lou Ditta out of Texas will be in this, another super skilled dynasty player as well. Talked about, he was actually our guest on the HSLD right after the NFL draft, had a lot of strong dynasty takes on that. Check that out if you didn't listen to it, but congratulations to Lou Ditta. Dan Fisher, and then Jeff Tirabassi, the Corn Fins, will be in the Pros vs. Joes this year.
All right, Jeff. Good for him.
So congratulations to Jeff Tirabassi. So that is 24 out of 42. We have 18 left, according to my math here. Former Football Guys Players Championship overall winner, Matthew Lively, will be competing in PBJ this year. Congratulations to Matthew. We'll see what he does to those pros. John Anderson, Eric Rubin, Ray Tate, welcome to PBJ. Another super talented dynasty player, a guy who's had some success in the Football Guys Players Championship as well, Paul Dietzman. Actually, Dave, I should mention this. I was hanging out last weekend at my brother's house down in the southern part of Wisconsin, and one of his friends came over who actually co-owns a dynasty team in the FFPC who's in the same league as Paul Dietzman.
Oh, really?
And we were talking about cat-like reflexes.
And he's like, that guy sends all these annoying trade offers all the time. And then tries to convince me about how they're good.
No comment. I will tell you off air Paul's strategy on that. I don't want to reveal it on there, but I
met Paul in person once. He's a really nice guy.
I've had plenty of pleasant email conversations with him.
Great. Yeah.
He's fantastic.
On one of those silly fantasy sports conferences he actually went to.
He did, really?
Yeah, because it was in Minnesota. I think he lives in Minnesota.
Oh, he lives in Minnesota. That's right.
He
okay.
just cruised out.
So was he like? Is he in the industry, or is just wanting to check it out?
He was a guest of someone in the industry, and we hung out for a while in the bar, and it was great.
Matthew Zimmer, congratulations, you are in PBJ. And then I'm letting the cat out of the bag here, but next week's guest on the HSFF Hour, a 3-time FFPC main event and Football Guys Players Championship league winner, Frank LaPrade, will be in Pros vs. Joes. We'll talk to him about that next week when he's a guest on this show next Friday. Jared Hassan, and then Glenn Lowy. Glenn Lowy, a guy who's been a mainstay in both the high society and big payback drafts. Had a lot of success across multiple fantasy formats.
That's great.
He's going to be tough to tangle with. Todd Pavlik, badges. We don't need no stinking badges. The Squatch Hunter himself, Richard Mallon. Welcome to Pros vs. Joes.
I'm actually happy because now he won't complain on the league chat, on the lobby chat about it. Why don't I get in?
You know, it's funny. By the way, David Hubbard also going to be in Pros vs. Joes this year. Congratulations to him, former main event champion, co-champion with Nelson Sousa. But Richard Mallon, Dave, you weren't here, but he co-hosted this show with me 1 week. And let me tell you, it was an eye-opening experience.
Was it fun?
It was extremely fun.
Nice.
And not only was he great for fantasy football analysis on life and stuff in general. You know, he is a Sasquatch hunter, like in real life.
No, I should actually listen. You know what? I never listened to the show, but I should pull that one up.
If you're ever,
can you pull the link up for me?
Yes, I can. I will absolutely do that.
I will actually listen. I'm going to walk tomorrow. If you do it tonight, I'll walk tomorrow and I'll listen to the show.
You're going to love it. It's a lot of good stuff on there. All right, so that's the top 36. So now that would normally be it for Pros vs. Joes, but
bonus round.
We have the bonus round here. These are the extra 6 that were drawn because of the extra for the slow draft that we're doing with Pros vs. Joes this year. So this is the final 6. Good luck, everybody. Theo Greminger will be in, Robert Russell, as well as Eric Young. Congratulations for being selected to the 2020 PBJ. Final 3 names here: James Bors, or Boris. I apologize if I'm butchering any of these names. I'm terrible when it comes to that. Sal Esposito. And then the final name, again, a former guest of this show, the HSLD, achieved a lot of success in the main event, the FPC, and now he will try to do his best in the Pros vs. Joes. Chris Birchby. Congratulations to you.
Cool.
Those are the 42 Joes in the 2020 FFPC Pros vs. Joes. Again, if you heard your name selected, you will be getting an email from Darren Armani, FantasyMojo.com, who organizes the whole thing. He'll get you squared up with a league, figure out what day you're going to be drafting, unless you're drafting the slow league. And then we will go forward with that and hopefully hear from you on the air if you're drafting live. I know I've said this before, Dave. The pros have no idea what's going to hit them this year.
Yeah, they're in some trouble.
This is a murderer's row of fantasy players here tonight.
Somebody had emailed me about, I don't even probably have a lot of time, but someone had emailed me about, whether the pros are any good or not. And I do think they are very good. Mm-hmm. They really are. But because the Joes are just as good as far as fantasy knowledge goes, but in my opinion, well, not in my opinion, it's reality. They have so much more experience drafting in these types of drafts. So you add those things together, and the pros just, they haven't played enough. They
don't know when to take a tight end. They don't know to whether to load up on running back or receiver. They don't know when to take a quarterback. A lot of these guys don't play with kickers or defenses anymore. That strategy is way over their heads.
When's the second tight end run? When do you take your second quarterback? All that stuff. And these other guys are doing it like on autopilot because they've done like 50-35s or they've done a bunch of football guys or whatever. So it's just they're going to crush them again. Which is great. I love it.
Right, yeah. For anybody interested, the Pros vs. Joes drafts, the first one we're going to have is going to be Sunday, July 26th. We're going to broadcast them live on this show. You'll be able to follow along on our YouTube channel as well to see the live draft board, 26th, 27th, 28th of July, and then the final three, August 2nd, August 3rd, August 4th. We have kept our guests waiting way too long here tonight.
Actually, before you bring the guests on, when was the second round? I'm putting it in my phone now.
August 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
Okay, thanks. Bring them on.
All right. And I got to send you that Richard Mallon podcast as well. I'm try to remember that. All right, let's bring on tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. He has been to every single live event in Las Vegas for high-stakes fantasy football for the FFPC, including each one dating back to the very first World Championship of fantasy football. He's got nearly 7 dozen best ball leagues under his belt already in 2020 and is a former $10,000 winner in the WCOF Super Satellite. He's here tonight to break down his latest Football Guys draft. Please welcome in 15-time FFPC and Football Guys league winner, Frank Nunes. Frank, good evening to you.
Good evening, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Why did it take us so long to get you on here, Frank? What's the story?
Oh, I don't know. I was in a Football Guys draft, and Eric was the moderator, and I jokingly said I want to be on your show, kiddingly, and he took me up, called my bluff, and here I am.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the strict rubric that people have to follow to be on this show. You know what's funny is Frank actually said it. I can't. It was probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago that he did this draft, and Frank actually said like, "Oh, hey, Bulky, can I be on your podcast?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll see how your draft goes tonight." And then in the 6th round, he's like, "How's my draft looking? Good enough to be on the show?" I'm like, "The wheels are in motion, my friend."
Oh, that's funny.
And then I said,
like it looks like crap.
Yeah. So I sent him an email afterwards, and we got it arranged, and I'm glad to have you on because, Frank, it's rare to have somebody on the program that has been, basically a main event player prior to FFPC, but basically since the dawn of high-stakes fantasy football in Las Vegas. Certainly, I think you can draw on a wide breadth of knowledge about how the high-stakes fantasy football game has changed over the last 20-plus years.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to my partner today, and I think the first whack-off or WCOFF was in 2002, and we kind of just, Lenny and Emil was, they put it together, and, we kind of just, is this real? Is it fake? Are we going to get scammed? And, we went to a live event at the MGM Grand way in the back, and it was pretty awesome. I mean, the first couple WCOFFs with everybody drafting in the same room at the same time, one time slot, no online, no, draft at 10 a.m., draft at 3 o'clock, draft at 7 p.m. Everybody was there in one room. And it was, it's hard in a geekish way. It's hard to explain, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was there,
the
man.
event
That was amazing.
Yeah, the events now are cool, but I mean, way back when you had, you had to walk all. The first one was way back in the MGN. You had to walk all the way in the back, and you had this room, and they had all these boards set up. And the very first year, the facilitators were clueless. They didn't know Marshall Falk was a running back. I mean, it was kind of. Then the second year, they got people with some knowledge. We started, getting better sticker, facilitators and sticker people, and it ran better. But the very first couple, with all 50 leagues or 45 leagues, I think the first year of the WCOFF, and you see people walking in with old football jerseys and, clipboards, and, the drafts were just, were pretty amazing. The first very few live ones were a kind of an event. I mean, it's going to be hard with online and computers and, people drafting and, to ever replicate that feeling. But I still go. I mean, Vegas is Vegas. I love Vegas.
Yeah, back in 2002, there was not a single person that said, "Hey, do you have like a plug-in for the Wi-Fi?" Or,
oh yeah, no.
What's the code for the Wi-Fi? It's like, do you have a computer in your home? Like, no one was bringing laptops even at that point.
It was like magazines basically.
There were people with magazines and
spreadsheets, magazines, and literally hard copy spreadsheets, and that was it.
Cheat sheets out of magazines too, like stuff like that.
It was right. It was wild, man.
And then I think
Frank,
like
we are going to get.
Year, Okay, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Frank.
I was going to say
we always like to talk over people, especially bulky.
Well, then the second or third year, then some of the vendors had magazines there, free copies, and people were grabbing those magazines and using those magazines as a draft, that they were going to draft in 10 minutes. They were pulling magazines off the tables from vendors of different magazines, and you're like, and you had some cheat sheet on I don't know, whatever the spreadsheet at the time was on a computer, and you thought you were prepared.
Lotus 123, I think.
Oh, Lotus! I forgot about Lotus. I had a flashback to my childhood a couple of weeks ago. Somebody mentioned DOS. You remember DOS, Dave?
Yeah, disk operating system.
Yeah, and like I used to. Well, I'll tell you off air, but it's nobody cares.
Tell the story. Tell it on air.
Well, no, I just like
all the swearing and embarrassing.
No,
stuff.
it has nothing to do with that. It's just when in the house I grew up in, my dad had an office in the basement, and we had a very old PC with the floppy disks, and I don't mean the floppy like 3.5-inch disc, the 5 1/4. And we would play games that we would get up early. We'd have our breakfast. We'd get ready for school, and we try to get up as early as possible so we could pound out a half hour of Demon Forge. Or there was a game called Trucker, where it was like you were a long road trucker, and you would just type in how much you'd sleep and how much you plan on driving, and it'd give you a gas update and all this stuff. And we loved it.
Nice.
And it was the dumbest game, but we loved it. We ate it all up. So memories
like Lemonade Stand was my game, where it's like you predict the temperature when you're running like your lemonade stand.
I had amongst
other business, not business games. But
when the internet, like the first edition.
Frank, don't worry. We'll let you, since we're riffing here.
I know it's terrible. We're going to get to you in a second. But 5th or 6th grade, when the first internet hit in the 90s, my aunt got Prodigy. Do you remember Prodigy?
Yeah.
At her house.
IBM.
And I'm like, wait a minute, you can play games on the internet, this is actually going on in real. It blew my mind. And now you think about what you have, the apps on your phone, it's insane.
Frank, did you have any games that you played when you were back in those days?
Oh, my grandma got a Pong, an original Pong with, you just played like a squash type of game, and we loved that. It was on a black and white TV. We thought that was the cat's meow. I mean, I remember our first was CompuServe. We would use CompuServe, and we could print up the AP box scores. And on Sunday evenings, I live in California, so about 5 o'clock, my brother and I and a neighbor, we would meet in my office, and we would print up the AP box scores on dot matrix printer and to do our scores, because there was no software yet. The commissioner had to tabulate it by hand. And, if you had, whoever, Dave Craig was your quarterback on the Seattle Seahawks, you were like, okay, I need the Seattle box score, and then you would tabulate the score. And our scoring system in the very first league was only touchdowns, and quarterbacks had to break 300 yards, or running backs, wide receivers had to break 100 yards, and they got a 5-point bonus. So, I mean, it was pretty basic scoring, but it was great. I mean, I've been hooked since.
The first fantasy football league I was ever in, and I brought this up on the show
league,
too.
Or was there a
no, the Bulky League.
Oh, yeah.
I started it in the early 90s.
Talk about scoring.
And
God.
Exactly. But, but it's interesting. We're talking about computers because it came up. I got some computer football game, and in the last 20 pages talked about this thing called fantasy football. And I was like, this is insane. This would be so, because this is actually what's really going on. And I started a league with some of my buddies in grade school. But that's where the bulky scoring came from, where if you were a running back and you ran the ball in for a touchdown from 5 yards out, okay, that's 6 points. But if you caught it from 5 yards out, boom, 12 points, double scoring. And then it based on distance, it got even crazier and crazier. But that was all because of the back of a manual of a football computer game that I had.
That's pretty funny. I remember, like a 100-yard interception return for a touchdown was like 24 points, 36 points.
Yeah, and it got crazier. And like these scores would be like 228 to 212, and then it got to be 298 to 256. It was, and we've actually, Frank, we've talked about doing this, not in some time, but doing a high-stakes, bulky league scoring, like a $750 entry.
Totally wacky.
Yeah, and just like a closed 12-team league.
Go ahead.
Yeah, ours was like 6 points, then 12, and then the 50-pluses were 24-point touchdowns. And, I mean, I think the one year Mark Griffin had 7 TDs in a game. He scored like, 88 points, just by himself. And it was like – and our first league was off an article in the Fresno Bee. I'm by Fresno, California, and they had an article. We started – I was in high school in 1984, in the fall of 84, my senior year, because I graduated in 85, and me and my buddy saw this article in the Fresno Bee. So we started probably week 3 of the 1984 season. We all met at a buddy's house, and we had a draft. And I remember my first ever fantasy football draft pick was Dave Craig of the Seattle Seahawks.
Dave, who was yours? Yours was Kurt Warner, right?
No, mine was Terrell Davis the year he tore his ACL.
Terrell Davis, yeah.
And Jake Plummer was the second-round pick. He sucked also. I was not very good. Hey, I have an idea. We should really do that. And why don't we call it Funhouse scoring?
Funhouse, I like that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm in. Frank, would you play in a league like that?
Would you play in a Funhouse?
Oh, I'd play in a league for sure.
Yeah, all right.
All right, we gotta bring it back.
I had Mark Clayton from the Marx Brothers. Remember the Dan Marino days? Mark Clayton won Dallas. I think Miami played Dallas on a Monday night, and he scored like 2 touchdowns, and I won the championship the very first year. And I thought I was smart, but I've been proven wrong ever since.
All right, I guess it's time to start the interview.
It's always good to have a humbling experience, Frank,
sure.
No question. And we're gonna get into some fantasy football now. Finally, I apologize to the listeners. Frank, when so you're out in California, when you're not winning all these leagues in the FFPC and the FPC, what are you doing for a living out there?
I'm a dairy farmer. Third-generation dairy farmer. I milk about 1,600 milk cows, and we farm about 400 acres, and it's my brother and I. We're partners, and been doing that since I got out of Cal Poly in 1990, so I'm just at the 30-year mark of being a full-time dairyman.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's dairy. I know a lot of dairy farmers. I don't know if this is public knowledge. I think it's public knowledge on the show, but Dave and I both live in Northeast Wisconsin. I have a lot of not only friends but family members who still run some dairy farms up here as well.
Right.
So you are after my own heart, my friend. This is good stuff.
Yeah, right. We're competing with California for the milk.
I don't look at it as a competition.
Those guys.
No, I look at it like they make some great stuff out there. We make some great stuff here, and everybody just benefits. That's the way I've always viewed it.
Yeah.
Vermont always brags about their cheddar.
We produce more milk. You guys make more cheese.
Yes, yeah.
Hey, you would know. I agree. I'm sure.
Cheese and beer. That's what it's all about.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have 1,600 cows. You're not actually out there, I don't know, milking the teats, so to speak, or anything like that. You guys have machines that do all that, right?
We do have machines. We're currently milking. We have a barn that milks 30 cows at a time. So there's 2 employees right now out there milking. They started probably about 1 p.m. this afternoon, and their shift will go till about 10 o'clock tonight. And then we have an AM and a PM shift. So everything's mostly fully automated. But they still have to help. They have to attach the machines, but the machines will come off automatically, and then they got to make sure if the machine malfunctions, then fix it or call me or something like that.
That's really. We could do 20 minutes on this whole thing. That's actually really super fascinating.
I'm totally down. Yeah.
All right. No, I'm not. Let's talk about the 301 pick in your latest Footballguys draft instead of cow milking. Why was David Johnson the right running back for you there over guys like James Conner, Leonard Fournette, and Melvin Gordon?
Well, I'm not sure he was the right running back. I just kind of looked at it this way. I had the first pick. I think it's my 4th Footballguys this year, and it's the first time I had the first pick. And I just, I think David Johnson, I'm not think he's the greatest, but I like the situations he's in. I think also the same with Todd Gurley. They don't really have a whole lot of competition there. Bill O'Brien traded for Dave Johnson. He's been blasted for it with the DeAndre Hopkins trade. And so I think he's going to give David Johnson every opportunity in the world to succeed. Otherwise, he's going to look even dumber than what most of the NFL thinks he is. And so I thought, Fournette, I don't know if Jacksonville's sold on him. They didn't pick up his option. Gordon still has some competition with Philip Lindsay. James Conner was injured last year, and so I just thought, and I also thought, with McCaffrey there, and if David Johnson hits, I don't think there's going to be a lot of football guys teams that'll have that combination, the McCaffrey-Johnson combo. So if I get lucky and make the playoffs, and then I go to the kind of the lottery at the end, maybe that combination sets me apart.
The other thing too with David Johnson, and let me ask you this. Let me frame the question like this for you, Frank. David Johnson, percentage chance he is a top 15 running back this year. Is it 70, 80, higher, lower?
15, I would say. Yeah, I'd say in the 70. I think. I mean, Carlos Hyde was pretty good last year on the Texans, and he came later, and and Bill O'Brien ran him. They don't really. I mean, who was the op? I mean, Duke Johnson. He looks like he's good, but no one ever plays him full time, and I don't even know who's the third running back on that team right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't know who it is either. But yeah, I mean, they should. Yeah. And you make the good point too. Like, this is the guy that they got. This is the centerpiece of the trade that they got back, where they traded allegedly their best player. So you're right. Bill O'Brien's going to want to show he was right. And if David Johnson falters this season, certainly it won't be because of volume, because he's going to get a ton of it this year, no question. All right, so let's talk about. Right. I bring this up every week on the show, Frank. The depth at wide receiver this year, I think a lot of people perceive it to be fairly significant. How much did that have to do with you taking a fourth running back when you got to the 501 in Devin Singletary, when you only had DK Metcalf as your lone receiver in this latest Football Guys draft for you?
Yeah, it had a lot to do with it, because a lot of the wide receivers after, I think they're all pretty much equal. I don't really, depending on which draft I do, sometimes I pick DJ Chark before Devontae Parker or Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, I'm down on him a little bit. I don't know the whole Tyrod Taylor there situation. I kind of eliminated Tyler Lockett once I had DK Metcalf, so, he was kind of out of it. Diggs is okay. AJ Green, got burnt by him last year, so I'm staying away from him. So I just figured Singletary has a chance to be really good with a lot of touches. I know they have Zach Moss, but I like touches, and I think Devin Singletary plus PPR, I think he'll catch a lot of passes. I think at some point Josh Allen, they might slow him down on the running because, to keep him healthy. So maybe that translates to 2, 3, couple more catches for Singletary. So that's why I went there. And then, I threw some darts later on with Robbie Anderson, Christian Kirk. So I think I like the depth at wide receiver, and I think there's a drop-off at running back. So I kind of said, if I take a fourth one here that can be a number one on probably maybe a playoff team, that's why I went Singletary.
Dave, go ahead. Nothing? Okay. I can say this right now. Essentially, Moss is going about 5 rounds behind Singletary right now.
Yeah.
And I think I'm, as much as I always love to say, hey, pick the guy going later, I think I'd rather have Singletary. I think I like the value of him in the 5th round versus Moss in the 10th.
Yeah, I agree. Again, you're back to a rookie with Moss, and there's not going to be enough practice time. And Singletary's been doing well. I don't understand. I get that Moss, people like him, and that they're talking about using him in that Frank Gore role. But Singletary, to me, is me the point-scoring guy, is me the pass catcher. So, like you said.
Hey, send me an offer for him in Gridiron Legends.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I will.
And I think right. the further we go along on these rookies, I'm getting more and more scared of some of these rookies. They're especially if they play 0 preseason games. Is Andy Reid going to put Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there to pick up a blitz when he has Patrick Mahomes, the $450 million man, and he doesn't know who to block, and Mahomes gets knocked out for the year? At least he knows Damian Williams knows the blitz assignments and can pick them up. So, without having practiced these rookies, I know the draft is fairly deep, but with this weird off season, I'm getting a little scared of some of the rookies.
We have a question coming up about those rookies in a little bit, and I'll let you elaborate a little bit more on that, Frank. But before we get to that, injured receiver that's been pretty polarizing out there, Dave.
Yeah, it's Deebo Samuel. He's no longer a rookie. He's now a second-year player.
Sorry, thank you.
What?
I'm an idiot. I thought Deebo Samuel was a rookie. He's not. Go ahead.
Say that. You were.
I thought I did. Okay. So
don't worry about it. Just relax. Take it easy. At what point in the season...
I need some cheese and wine over here, Dave. That would help me relax.
Yeah, in the chat room, the cheese and wine discussion is getting quite heated. Yeah. At what point in the season do you think we see Debo back to full health? I forgot. How long did they say the injury was supposed to be? 10 weeks?
Okay, so this is interesting you bring this up because originally it was reported as maybe a 3-month injury. Gene Bramall from Footballguys, our good buddies over at Footballguys, said he didn't know why it was reported as a 3-month injury because stuff like this, when it happens, these Jones fractures happen in season, these guys are missing like 6 to 8 weeks. They're not missing 12 weeks. So he didn't understand where this 12-week timeline was coming. So it's probably going to be something much shorter than 12 weeks. And maybe
you shrewdly took him at the 9:01 then.
Yeah, there you go. So let's talk about that, Frank.
Yeah, I have a lot of Debo. I mean, I'm a Ram fan, so I watch a lot of the 49ers. And if Debo got hurt, missed the whole year, it probably helps my Rams. But as a fantasy player, I mean, I hope Debo gets back on the field. I guess I should have been a little scared more of the foot injury because last year, like I alluded to earlier, I got burnt by the A.J. Green, drafting him thinking he was going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, and he missed 17 or 16 or whatever the whole season. So I to be honest, I really, if I get Debo, if he misses the first 3 weeks and he's the Debo that was at the end that's running the ball, catching the ball, being explosive, I'm fine by that. But I don't, those injuries aren't usually very good, but I mean, at that point, I thought his value and his upside was incredible at the 9-1, so that's why I went there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at it from the standpoint of when do you balance out the ceiling with the floor, and certainly in the 9th round, you probably have a pretty good core of receivers if you're drafting in the Footballguys Players Championship, and then it might be time to start swinging for the fences, certainly, and I think you made a pretty strong case for him there. We're talking with Frank Nunes, the 15-time league champ in the FFPC, as well as the Footballguys Players Championship here on the HSFF Hour. Okay, so you're a Rams fan. This is interesting because I want to get into the tight ends. If you've paid, and Frank, I don't know if you're on Twitter at all, but Twitter, the high-stakes fantasy football Twitter has been blowing up about Higbee. Incredibly polarizing as a prospect so far this year. There's another tight end for the Rams that you grabbed in this draft that took place a little bit less than a week ago. 16th round, you took Gerald Everett. Is he the guy for the Rams tight ends that you'd rather own given the draft value when you can get Everett that late? I just want to get your thoughts on that, given that you are a fan of the team.
Well, I have conversations with my own Ram fan friends, and it's kind of polarizing too. I mean, Everett was kind of the starter last year, and then he kind of sort of got banged up. If you remember way back in 2018, he had a very good Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs in that epic Monday night game, which I was there live, which was probably the best live pro football game I've ever been to. But
yes.
I don't know. I mean, I think Everett, he's more athletic, but I mean, you can't really argue with Higbee's production the end of last year. I mean, he won some people some money. The targets he was getting, the catches he was getting. And so I don't know. I mean, I just, Everett is another guy that kind of, if something goes wrong there, they have to replace Cook somewhere. Someone's going to get his targets. Gurley got a few targets. He's gone. So, Everett, I think, has some upside. And, with that was my third tight end, so I figured it was worth a chance in a tight end premium type of format.
Dave, I don't know. We haven't really talked a whole lot about – I think we've talked a little bit about Everett. We haven't talked much about Higbee. Just to give you guys a little bit of background here, over the last 4 days in the Footballguys Players Championship, and by the way, we get this ADP data from FantasyMojo.com, which is a tremendous resource for any FFPC player and incredibly affordable as well. Darren Armani, who runs that website, runs the Pros vs. Joe's Challenge. Tyler Higbee, Dave, over the last 4 days, 603 as tight end 7. Gerald Everett, obviously, going much, much later than that. We just talked about how Frank got him in the 16th round. He is on average going in the 14th round as tight end 26. Do you have a horse in that race?
I like the value of Everett, actually, as just a kind of a flyer tight end because he was being undervalued and he did really well early in the season. Higbee's pricey and has risk. I think that I'd probably look somewhere else. Like where's Hayden Hurst going? Like a round and a half later?
Yeah, he is going later. I'm going to look him up right now. Yeah. Hayden Hurst, the new tight end for the Atlanta Falcons, he is actually going right after Higbee as far as tight ends go. He's going at the 6'11". So you're looking at about, half round?
Yeah, so I'd probably look towards Hurst a little bit. Just he has a first-round pedigree, and he's on an offense that throws a ton to the tight end. So I think I might go that direction.
Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Rob Gronkowski, Jared Cook, all going after.
I like Henry too.
I know you like Henry. You mentioned this before.
What's his name? Tyrod.
Yeah, I know. And the guy after Cook, I know you don't like, T.J. Hawkinson. Not a fan.
Not a huge fan. I mean, he's got the pedigree. I really do need to see it for some reason with him. He was so dreadful as a rookie. I just need to see a little bit more.
Frank, you've done 7 dozen best balls so far this season. Do you have a lot of Hawkinson shares? Just curiously.
I have quite a few. I have more early Hawkinsons than I do lately. It just seems like I could get them a little cheaper earlier, and then plus the earlier ones. Hayden Hurst, before he got traded to Atlanta, he wasn't really drafted. Gronkowski hadn't come out of retirement, so those are 2 tight ends that now go ahead of Hawkinson. So before the early ones, I was drafting Hawkinson because there was 2 less horses in the race. So I have a few more early now. I maybe draft a Hurst or a Gronkowski, take a chance on him. So I mean, the tight end deals evolved a little bit since the very first starting best balls that started in January and February.
There you go. All right, so let's talk
about. I like Hawkinson.
I
think he's a goal line. I think they'll get some goal line targets. So I probably like Hawkinson a little more than Dave.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
He was a super highly drafted tight end. He's really talented. So yeah, I could totally see it. Keeping the questions on the West Coast, we're talking about the 49ers. Raheem Mostert asked for a trade. Have you changed the way, or at least you plan to draft him or Tevin Coleman or Jerick McKinnon in Football Guys drafts going forward?
I drafted last night in a best ball, and I think Mostert probably went around lower than what he was probably going. I probably won't change on him. To me, he passes the eyeball test. He's the best running back, I think, on the 49ers. I mean, he scores. He has had some problems staying healthy. I don't think he has a whole lot of leverage. I don't see him moving him. And, he's only really talking about $1 million more that he wants to be with Tevin Coleman. He makes about $3 million. I think Tevin Coleman makes a little bit over $4 million. So I can't see, them shipping him out of town for a $1 million. It's not like he wants Patrick Mahomes' money or he's holding out like Ezekiel Elliott. So I don't think he's really going to go. And if people are going to let him drop another round, I'll probably draft him. And I'm staying away from Jerick McKinnon. I mean, I don't draft him. 80 best balls I've done, I haven't drafted him once, I think. 2 years out of the league. He's not cutting yet, the information I read last on him. So I'm out on Jerick McKinnon right now.
I'm totally with you on Jerick McKinnon. It's funny because I was actually on Rotoballer Radio on Sirius XM talking with Real Talk Raf and Josh Hayes, who is actually going to be in the Pros vs. Joes competition this year at the FFPC, and we were talking about that Niners backfield with Mostert and McKinnon and Coleman. And I said, there's a non-zero chance that McKinnon is actually the running back to own in San Francisco for like 3 weeks. But good luck finding out what those 3 weeks are. The fact that he's still not cutting, the fact that he's so far behind Coleman and Mostert, I think this is kind of a non-story. I think they upgrade Mostert. Yeah. It's not – Dave, do you remember
I think it's more likely he gets caught myself.
McKinnon, right, yeah. Do you remember – and this is more of a pop culture reference. Dave, you saw Ocean's 13, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do you remember the scene when Scott Conn and Casey Affleck were in Mexico where they're making the dice and everything, and then they put the workers on strike, and then Brad Pitt reports, oh yeah, they want 34,000 more to get the
30,
thing.
Yeah, pesos.
And then they're like, okay, well, they turn to Terry Benedict. They're like, you can make this happen. We'll post-date the check. And Pitt's like, no, 34,000 total, not per worker. and so I think that's how it is with Mostert. It's not. Like Frank said, he's looking for like $1 million more for a Super Bowl contender for a guy who absolutely crushed it the last third of the season last year. When you have a guy like McKinnon who isn't cutting yet, and a guy like Coleman who's never really lived up to it, give him the money, move on. It's easier
for you to throw that.
But here's the thing: you just traded DeForest Buckner to the Colts for that draft pick, so now you don't have to pay him. You're paying that rookie. I can't remember who they took there. It was another pass rusher, I think. They're paying him, and they don't have to pay him off his rookie contract for another 4 years. The money's there. Make it happen. We're talking with Frank Nunes, the 15-time champ in the FFPC and Football Guys Players Championship. Kittle will be rewarded. He could be the highest paid tight end in the league when he gets that contract. That is worth noting as well. They let Manny Sanders go. It doesn't seem like they're in any kind of rush to extend Jimmy Garoppolo as well. So we'll see what happens there. But, I mean, Mostert's not asking for a lot. Make it happen as a Mostert owner in a dynasty draft. All right, so let's talk about David Njoku. Has he become a good flyer for you in drafts now that we know that he wants a trade and potentially could go to a better situation than he is in Cleveland, Frank? They got Austin Hooper. They got Harrison Bryant there. Are you taking Njoku late given how far his price has fallen?
Not really. I don't know where he's going to land. I'm not sure what's a good landing spot for him. So I really have kind of stayed away. I've taken, later on I'll take chances on a Gerald Everett or, even a Jimmy Graham, Dawson Knox, those type of guys. Those I really haven't. I don't like Njoku, so I've really been staying away from him, even in the tight end friendly. I try to guess maybe one of them Seattle guys. I think they can be productive. They like to throw the tight end, so I'll throw a dart at Hollister, or I'll throw a dart at Disley. I'll throw a dart at Greg Olsen, but I've been throwing very few darts at Njoku.
All right, so knowing that, how you feel on that, Austin Hooper is going in the 9th round of Football Guys drafts. Have you been drafting him a lot?
Not too much, just because he goes his value is a little bit, or his ADP is a little bit higher than what I'm willing to give, and there's a lot of spoons in that pot. You got Odell Beckham, you have Jarvis Landry, you have Kareem Hunt, you have Nick Chubb. So I've kind of been staying away from Hooper too, just because, I'd rather just take a chance on, Gesicki or a Hawkinson or a Fant than a Hooper.
We have a question from the. Go ahead, Frank.
I said the tight end I've been drafting a lot is Jack Doyle. I've been drafting him a lot. Phillip Rivers throws the tight end. Frank Reich uses the tight end. There's no Eric Ebron. I think that situation as an upside guy. I have a lot of Jack Doyle. I don't trust Trey Burton as a backup. Mo Alley Cox as a backup. So, the guy I take a dart at is a Jack Doyle, and then I, do some Jonnu Smith, Blake Jarwins instead of the Austin Hoopers, those type of guys.
Yeah, Frank, you and I are of one mind when it comes to Jack Doyle. I am definitely on board for him, too. I think he's being underdrafted right now. It makes a lot of sense in a tight end premium league like the FFPC. I'd be remiss if I didn't read this question from the chat room here. Watch Guy, good old Hudson Kern Reeve wants to know, where do you rank Hayden Hurst as an FFPC tight end this year? Thank you for the question, Kern. And I'll tell you right now, before I tell Frank this, but Hayden Hurst is going off currently over the last 4 days in the Football Guys Players Championship, tight end 8 at the 6'11". Does tight end 8 sound right to you, Frank, or should he be higher or lower?
That's about right for me. Obviously you have the big two in Kelsey and Kittle, and then, you have the next two in Andrews and Hurt. And then, it's a preference still, Higbee, Waller, Hunter Henry, Hurst, they're all out there. Another guy I do not like is Evan Ingram. I don't trust his health. You got a new coach there, so I haven't really been drafting a lot of Evan Ingram. I'll pass on him and take a Hunter Henry or a Hayden Hurst or take a chance on Gronkowski. Not that I think Gronkowski is going to play every game, but he came back for a reason, and I like Rob. He won me some money in the past, so that kind of leans me his way. But I think Hurst is about the 8th tight end. He's right in that mix. That's about where I'm taking him.
All right, I'm going to fire off another question. Are you interested in the Kansas City running game at all? Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 2nd, Damian Williams in the 6th, or avoiding the situation more or less overall?
I have a few Clyde Edwards-Helaire before the draft. Obviously, you throw darts at rookie running backs, and hopefully you hit a few. I have a couple. In the late second, early 3rd round, when the draft after it went down, I won't draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 1st. Probably the very, very end of the 2nd round. But I'd probably get out drafted on him because I'd rather have a Todd Gurley, a David Johnson, Aaron Jones, those type of players. But I do get a few Damian Williams, and that goes back to like what I said with the rookies, all rookies in general, with the weird preseason, a limited amount of preseason games if there's any. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in a perfect situation to, with a perfect coach in Andy Reid, so he could be a monster. But just with a weird preseason, the preseason being so strange in 2020, that I probably have more Damian Williams than I do Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I'm with you on the Williams versus Helaire thing. The thing is, to invest in a rookie running back this year is in the second round is asking a lot. And we already, I think it was the running backs coach in Kansas City come out and say that he's excited. He thinks Williams is going to take a step forward this year. I think this screams Williams. I will have almost no Edwards-Helaire exposure this year. I love Damian Williams. Dave, Frank has been extremely gracious with his time tonight. I want to sneak in one more final question before we let him go tonight, and this is the most important question.
All right, we need sleepers and busts. Who is a player you've been avoiding in the early rounds of your draft so far this year, and a player you've been targeting in the mid to later rounds?
Well, probably in the tight end premium, one of them I mentioned was Evan Ingram. I'm staying away from him. Nick Chubb, I probably don't draft him because of the hunt and the PPR. The Mixon scares me a little bit with a holdout possibility, even though the holdout isn't, I don't think he'll pull a Melvin Gordon or a Le'Veon Bell. The guys I'm drafting, like I said earlier, is Jack Doyle, in about the 8th to 10th round in a tight end premium league. I'm doing a lot of Jack Doyle. I'm doing a few Naheem Hineses. And then later on, being a Ram fan, I'm throwing some darts at Malcolm Brown. I don't know what that situation. I think there's a 33% chance that he might be the running back, and you're getting him way later than the Cam Akers, way even later than the Darrell Henderson. So I don't know, who's going to be that running back. I'm not sure why the Rams drafted Cam Akers and not help their offensive line as a Ram fan, but that's McVay is Wonder Boy, so maybe he probably knows a lot more than I do. But those are the guys, my sleepers, that I've been drafting. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Our very own Wonder Boy coming on the show tonight from the High Stakes Fantasy Football perspective. It was Frank Nunes. Frank, listen, awesome job tonight, not only from the fantasy football perspective. We brought up guys like Dave Craig, like Terrell Davis tonight. We also talked about Prodigy, CompuServe, stuff I never thought we'd get into tonight. It was awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Good luck in all your leagues this year. Really appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you again soon, dude. Don't be a stranger.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Frank Nunes. Ladies and gentlemen, 15-time FFPC.
He goes by the team name Squids.
Squids, yeah, that's his team. So if you're ever in a Footballguys draft or an FFPC best ball and you see the team name Squids, it is indeed Frank Nunes hopping aboard in that draft. Good luck competing against him. I had no idea that interview was going to take that turn. And when I say take that turn, we backed out of the driveway and we took that turn right away.
Yeah, it was fun. That was great.
The trip down memory road was awesome. Memory lane, not memory road. Memory lane was fantastic tonight, and Frank played into that. Plus, he's a dairy farmer.
Yeah, that's cool.
God, just.
I wonder if he knows Mike Santos, who does that too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Mike Santos is.
And Mike lives in.
He's in California. Yeah.
Tulare or something.
Yeah. Oh, we should have remembered to ask him that. Damn it.
I thought of it, but
Well, you should have. You should have asked him.
Yeah.
All right. So we don't have a whole lot of time to get to emails. By the way, Brothers Mayhem chiming in. Good stuff, Frank, tonight. Frank was a great guest. We don't have a whole lot of time to get to emails. We got about 7 minutes left in the show. I want to sort of hit on the topics. If we have time for an email, great. If we don't, we don't. All right. I want to thank Footballguys, Roto World, and Rob for tonight's rundown. We touched on this, Dave, with Frank, but Raheem Mostert has indeed asked for a trade. I've kind of made my thoughts on this pretty clear. Brett Tessler, who is Raheem Mostert's agent, noted that his contract with the Niners was negotiated when he was a special teamer. And he is looking to get a trade into Tevin Coleman money, which is like $4.5 million a year. He's making like $3 million right now. From a fantasy football perspective, knowing that they have McKinnon, knowing they have Coleman, are you changing the way that you draft Mostert, Coleman, or McKinnon right now based on this request that Mostert's team has made at San Francisco?
I'm actually a little more, kind of Frank alluded to that, or he said that he's dropping around. So if he drops around, I'm actually more interested in Mostert. Actually, I like him.
We were talking about this morning on Roto Baller Radio, but Mostert has actually plunged a little bit, not as much as you'd think. He was going right around that mid to late fourth. He's actually going at the late 10th. The 5-10 is where he's going. The end of the 5th, Dave. He is looking at a spot right now, right behind Kareem Hunt and Devin Singletary, right ahead of DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins. You can get a starting running back at the end of the 5th round. And I think I brought this up last week when we were talking about Mostert trying to get a new contract. This makes sense to get a starting running back on a run-based team there.
Yeah, for sure. It absolutely does.
I'm down for that. I like that spot where Mostert's going. Let's talk about Philadelphia real briefly. Deshaun Jackson has made some comments on his Instagram that were not great. He is guaranteed $4.8 million in salary. He has already been paid his $2 million player option this year. If Philadelphia doesn't indeed try to release him, they'll try to get that guaranteed money back. But Dave, this is the number one option in the Philadelphia offense. As much as we talk about Jalen Reagor, he's a rookie. And
Who are we talking about here?
Deshaun Jackson. Alshon Jeffrey's
Deshaun Jackson, number one option in the offense?
Do you not think? No,
receiver.
For Carson Wentz. Marquise Goodwin is, he is what he is. Alshon Jeffrey is hurt. Jalen Reagor's a rookie. John Hightower's a rookie. By the way, I'll say this for KFFSC.com. Commissioner Farrell Elliott told me in a dynasty startup I was recently in with Kentucky, he said, take John Hightower with your last pick. Everybody is going to be on John Hightower round week 5 or week 6. If Deshaun Jackson's released, all of a sudden Hightower becomes much more interesting. Your thoughts on Deshaun Jackson as a redraft pick this year, knowing that over the last 4 days after this news hit, Football Guys drafters were taking him as wide receiver 62 in the 14th round.
That's pretty cheap. I took him in the Scott Fish Bowl.
I did too.
I guess after this news came out.
I did too.
Okay, yeah. I mean, they announced they fined him, and that they're not cutting
him.
Yeah,
they said he needs to be more active in being out there with everything, all the conversations going on.
Yeah, hugging all the different people that he didn't hug before.
I was actually hoping, and I can't remember, this is like round 12. I'm like, God, I hope Deshaun Jackson or Sammy Watkins makes it back to me as my number 4 receiver. They both made it back to me, and then Watkins made it back to me in the 5th. So I got Jackson and Watkins, and I'm pleased as punch about that.
Yeah,
I think Jackson's going to be a force for Philly this year.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back down to health for him, but I think you're right. Actually, I think he'll do pretty well.
He is 33. He's a guy who relies on speed, but
he still has it too.
He still does. And the more important thing, Dave, Philadelphia doesn't have a whole lot of other options there. Jeffrey's hurt. Arcega-Whiteside kind of was not great last year. Reagor's a rookie. There's not a lot to like in that Philadelphia offense. All right, one other topic I want to get into this week before we say sayonara here on the HSFFR. The Lions have indeed signed their second-round pick, DeAndre Swift, to a 4-year contract. Swift, as you know, 5'8", 212, averaged 7.8 yards per touch behind both Nick Chubb and Sony Michel at Georgia when he was a true freshman. And then the last 2 years when he was the obligatory starter there, 1,000 yards, he hit the 1,000 yards plateau. He hit 7 touchdowns each of the last 2 years. Excuse me. I'm trying to read this at the same time talking. I'm terrible at it. He had the 63rd percentile adjusted spark athleticism, 6.6 yards per carry on 440 career carries at Georgia. 20% of his carries his senior year, 196 of them, gained at least 10 yards. That was the best mark in this year's class. Dave, this is the part I want to bring up with you, and I want to bring in draft value into this. DeAndre Swift, people are taking in the Football Guys Players Championship over the last 4 days, running back 28 at the 5'10". Conversely, Kerryon Johnson, his main competitor for targets, is not going until the 9'10" as running back 43. If you're going to go and hitch your wagon to the Swift or Johnson horse, which one would it be?
You know, I've been poo-pooing the rookie running backs, but I might actually go with Swift.
I'm agreeing with you on this one.
I actually think he is really talented. He does have, I always joke around about this, but he does have the cool name, Swift. I mean, good God, a running back named Swift is fantastic. Kerryon Johnson, they don't believe in him. I think that they've lost faith in him, and I think that it won't be week 1, but it might be weeks 3 or 4 that Swift takes over and really just takes that job.
All right.
That's my guess.
One of the things we've purported on this show for years is the way a guy looks, the way his name sounds. Dave just brought it up with DeAndre Swift. Kerryon Johnson, is that not the name of an accumulator, of a plotter, of a
great point,
of a guy of a Michael Turner ilk, a guy who needs volume to be successful? Now, FFPC drafters have clearly said yes to this because they're taking him 4 rounds after Swift. And I'm going to echo Dave's comments. We are nervous about this year's rookie class. But to the point where I'm willing to pass on DeAndre Swift in the 6th round, probably not so much. So I think he's a nice value there.
Well, he's not expensive like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So
exactly.
And it's not the same as granted Andy Reid. That's like you get the gold star when you have an Andy Reid running back. But still, it's a run-based offense. I mean, Patricia loves to run. So
Swift is going at not the 6th round, the 5-10, right behind Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, Devin Singletary, Raheem Mostert, right ahead of J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, and Damian Williams. That is where Swift is going. I think there's a lot to be said for Swift at the end of the 5th round there. So take it for what it's worth. We both like Swift. You can get him potentially in the 6th round. If you go 0 RB in the FFPC, you go with four wide receivers and a tight end there to get Swift as your number 1 running back. There's a lot worse ways to start off your football guys draft as you're trying to win $500,000.
You could take Kerryon Johnson then too in like the 9th or 10th if you really wanted to.
All right, so that's a good question here too. 5th round and a 9th round, that's okay to soak into to lock up a running game?
That's pretty cheap. That's pretty cheap to lock up that run. It's a pretty solid offense. I mean, it's not the worst.
Brothers Mayhem chiming in the chat room. He can't trust any rookies this year. And I'll tell you what, I'm with him. I don't trust any of them. But I'm willing to take a chance on some of them. And that is where I'm going to leave it on the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening, all you Pros versus Joes guys. I apologize we didn't get to the emails tonight. I promise you we will get to them next week. I want to thank Frank Nunes, Dave Gerzak, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you. We are live once again next Friday at 10/9 Central, 2-time FFPC main event champ and Football Guys Players Championship League winner. We're continuing our tour of Frank's, Dave. Frank LaPrade is going to be on the show that night to not only talk about that, but his Pros versus Joe strategy in 2020.
So did you know before you booked
I didn't.
So you booked him,
I thought about bringing this up before the show with you.
Yeah.
I was like, people are going to think I rigged this somehow. I didn't rig it. It was just total dumb luck that Frank got selected and is also on the show next week.
Well, we've had a lot of shows. So when you always, you brought up a lot of people who've been on the show.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's because we've done a zillion shows.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry. You've done a zillion shows.
Not a zillion.
I've done like a few shows.
Not that many. Shows. Hey, by the way, I can tease this. I don't know the exact date yet, but we found out last week or 2 weeks ago that we had another celebrity playing with us. I don't know if you guys know this, but
Snoop Dogg?
No. Nick Bakay, who has been a producer and an actor on King of Queens. He's also been a stand-up comedian. Voiced Salem the Cat on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, a hit ABC sitcom for the better part of a decade. Super ingratiated in the industry. He's played with us for the FFPC for many years. There's other celebrities out there, including David Taylor, who is the Magic Man, the 2018 World Championship wrestler. He is actually going to be on the show. I don't think it's going to be before August. Our show.
This show?
This show. He's going to be on this show coming up before August. We're going to talk to him. It's going to be very exciting. He's a big FFPC fan, drafted a lot of teams here. You can follow him on Twitter at MagicMan_PSU. Awesome. 85,000 followers, Dave. So he's out there, and he's loving every minute of it. David Taylor going to be coming up. But that's neither here nor there. Frank LaPrade is next week. Can't wait for that. I want to thank Frank Nunes for coming on tonight. Book those flights and rooms for Las Vegas at Planet Hollywood. And again, you guys, you can save $400 off each additional FFPC main event team right now. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. Check out the Football Guys Players Championship. We got a midnight draft coming up here in, I don't know what it is, about 50 minutes. We got 4 teams left. It's going to happen. Hopefully you guys can jump in that because I'm commissioning that. Best Ball Leagues, Best Ball Slims, Dynasty Startups, Terminator Sats, all that going on. MyFFPC.com. What a wonderful time to be alive for fantasy football fans. Your
this
weekend
has been
starts
another
now.
episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com that was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Crumple 1 a.m., dude.
And as we sign off tonight, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. If that midnight fills, there will be a 12:30 added. I don't know if the 12:30 will fill, so make sure you're getting in on the midnight. If you miss out on that, get in on the 12:30. And if the 12:30 fills, 1 a.m. draft, baby. Here we go. I'm very excited to be a part of it. Can't wait to talk about all the hijinks and everything that will happen going forward on that. Dave, I don't know. This is the other thing I was going to bring up when Frank was on the show. But this was after your time. But one of the games we started playing when we were kids, we started playing Commander Keen and Wolfenstein 3D, which was sort of the precursor to Doom. You remember Doom, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So Wolfenstein was like, it was set back in the 40s, and you were like a U.S. Army POW, and you were housed in these Nazi castles, and you had to break out. Those games you can download. I remember it was a big thing. You were paying $40-$50 for them back in the day to get them on, floppy disks. And now you can go on the internet and just Google them, and you don't even have to download them. You can just play them online. Like it's like instant, 30 seconds, and you're playing it.
Right.
It is tremendous.
It is.
How far we've come as
Isn't it
a
so
society.
Great to be alive right now.
It is great to be alive.
And healthy and stay safe, everyone.
Do that, and just know that if we can make Commander Keen streamable, if we can make Wolfenstein 3D available in 30 seconds, you have no idea what this world is able to accomplish. Thanks for listening. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
Yeah, I know what that's from.
Casey Kasem, baby.
Yeah. He did.
Oh, why do you got to end it on that?
From COVID.
No, that's not true at all.
Oh, something else?